Warriors once clashed with swords, empires rose and fell, and revolutions shook the world, but Switzerland chose a different path. Nestled in the heart of Europe, this small nation defied conquerors, outlasted wars, and forged its own destiny. From the battles of medieval freedom fighters to the rise of a modern global powerhouse, Switzerland's story is one of resilience, neutrality, and quiet strength. But how did a land once torn by conflict become a symbol of peace and prosperity? This is the journey of Switzerland, through war, revolution, and reinvention. Switzerland, the birth of a nation in the heart of Europe. Prehistory, the first footsteps. Thousands of years before Switzerland had a name, before its borders were drawn, the land was shaped by ice and time. The glaciers retreated, revealing a rugged landscape of valleys, rivers, and towering mountains, a land waiting for its first inhabitants. By 10,000 BCE, these first settlers, drawn by fertile lands and abundant wildlife, made Switzerland their home. They hunted deer, fished in crystal-clear lakes, and began crafting tools from flint and bone. Over centuries, small Neolithic villages emerged, with wooden houses built on stilts over lakes, protecting them from floods and predators. The land was fertile, but it was also unforgiving. Winters were harsh and survival demanded resilience. Yet, these early people laid the foundation for a civilization that would stand for millennia. Antiquity, the Celts and the Roman invasion. By the 1st century BCE, the Helvetii were the dominant force in the region. Fierce warriors, skilled traders, and expert craftsmen, they thrived in what would become Switzerland. But their world was about to change forever. In 58 BCE, the Battle of Bybrak changed everything. The Helvetii, despite their strength, were no match for Caesar's disciplined legions. The Romans conquered and integrated the region into their empire, establishing cities like Aventicum, modern-day Avanches, filling the land with aqueducts, roads, and grand amphitheaters. For centuries, Switzerland became a vital part of Roman Gaul, connecting trade routes across the empire. But as Rome weakened, new invaders loomed on the horizon. The medieval period, castles, kings, and the rise of Swiss identity. By the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire had fallen. Germanic tribes, including the Burgundians, Alemanni, and Franks, took control of Switzerland, bringing with them new languages, cultures, and rulers. Christianity spread, and powerful feudal lords built towering castles atop hills, their banners fluttering in the cold wind. Switzerland was now divided into small, warring territories, caught between the Holy Roman Empire and the ambitions of neighboring kingdoms. But something was stirring in the hearts of the Swiss people, a desire for independence, for unity. This was just the beginning of Switzerland's legendary struggle for freedom. Switzerland was forged in the fires of time, its mountains, rivers, and people shaped by war, trade, and ambition. The echoes of its past still whisper in the wind, in the ancient stone walls, and in the spirit of a nation that refused to be conquered. Switzerland, the birth of a nation, 1300 to 1798. The Old Confederacy and the fight for independence, late medieval period. By the early 14th century, Switzerland was not yet the unified nation we know today. Instead, it was a collection of small territories under the rule of the powerful Habsburg dynasty. The people of the mountain valleys, farmers, traders, and skilled mercenaries, grew restless under foreign rule. In 1291, 3 rural cantons, Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden, swore an oath of mutual defense, forming the foundation of the Swiss Confederacy. The struggle for independence was fierce. The legendary Battle of Morgarten, 1315, saw Swiss peasants, armed with little more than pikes and determination, defeat a heavily armored Habsburg army. More victories followed at Sempach, 1386, and Naples, 1388, solidifying the Confederacy's reputation as an unbreakable force. Over time, more regions joined the alliance, and by the 15th century, the Swiss Confederacy had become a major power in Central Europe. The Swiss Reformation and religious divisions. By the 16th century, Switzerland found itself at the heart of a new battle, not for independence but for faith. The Reformation, led by figures like Huldrych Zwingli in Zurich and later John Calvin in Geneva, divided the country between Catholic and Protestant regions. The ideological rift led to violent conflicts, including the Wars of Kappel 1529 to 1531, where Protestant and Catholic cantons clashed over religious control. Despite these internal struggles, the Reformation established Switzerland as a center of religious thought. Geneva, under Calvin, became a hub for Protestant refugees, earning the city the nicknames Protestant Rome. Early modern Switzerland, a nation of mercenaries and neutrality. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Switzerland's reputation as a land of skilled warriors grew. Swiss mercenaries became highly sought after across Europe, fighting in wars for the highest bidder. The Swiss Guard, formed in 1506, continues to serve as the Vatican's elite protection force to this day. While Europe was ravaged by the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, Switzerland remained largely untouched. In 1648, the Treaty of Westphalia formally recognized Swiss independence from the Holy Roman Empire, marking the country's first major step toward permanent neutrality, a principle that would define Switzerland in the centuries to come. By 1798, Switzerland was still a loose confederation of cantons, each with its own laws, currencies, and governance. But the world was changing and revolution was on the horizon. The French, inspired by their own revolution, would soon march into Swiss territory, ushering in a new era of political upheaval. From its humble beginnings as a mountain alliance to its emergence as a formidable force in Europe, Switzerland's journey through the Old Confederacy period was defined by resilience, war, and ideological transformation. While divided by faith and regional differences, the Swiss people fought tirelessly for independence and autonomy, laying the foundation for the modern nation we know today. Switzerland in the Napoleonic era and its aftermath, 1798 to 1848. The French invasion and the Helvetic Republic, 1798 to 1803. By the late 18th century, Switzerland was a fragmented confederation of independent cantons, each with its own laws, customs, and governance. But the winds of revolution sweeping through Europe would soon reach Swiss borders. In 1798, following the French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte's armies invaded Switzerland, overthrowing the Old Swiss Confederacy and establishing the Helvetic Republic, a centralized, French-backed government that replaced Switzerland's traditional system of semi-independent states. For the first time, Switzerland had a unified constitution, a national government, and equal rights for citizens across cantons. However, the radical changes were met with resistance. The Helvetic Republic faced internal rebellions, economic instability, and conflicts between federalists, who supported centralization, and conservatives, who wanted a return to the old system. Napoleon, recognizing that Switzerland was too divided to function as a centralized state, abandoned the Helvetic Republic in 1803 and imposed the Act of Mediation, restoring much of the old Confederation's autonomy while maintaining some central structures. The Restoration and Regeneration, 1815-1830s. After Napoleon's defeat in 1815, the victorious European powers gathered at the Congress of Vienna to reshape the continent. Switzerland's neutrality was formally recognized, and the Swiss Confederation was re-established, now with 22 cantons. The country's independence and permanent neutrality were guaranteed, principles that would define Swiss foreign policy for centuries. Despite the return to decentralization, the early 19th century saw growing tensions between conservative and liberal forces. The Restoration period, 1815-1830s, was marked by resistance to democratic reforms, as conservative elites sought to maintain control. But inspired by the liberal revolutions in France and across Europe, Swiss reformers pushed for change. This period, known as the Regeneration 1830s-1840s, saw the introduction of new constitutions in many cantons, granting freedom of the press, civil rights, and democratic institutions. However, deep divisions remained, especially between Catholic conservative cantons and Protestant liberal ones. The Sonderbund War, 1847, Switzerland's last civil war. By the 1840s, Switzerland was split between two factions. The liberal radicals, mostly Protestant, pushing for a strong, centralized government. The conservative Catholics, favoring cantonal autonomy and traditional values. Fearing domination by the liberals, 7 Catholic cantons formed the Sonderbund, a secret defensive alliance, in 1845. When the federal government attempted to dissolve the Sonderbund in 1847, war broke out. The Sonderbund War was short but decisive. The federal forces, led by General Guillaume-Henri Dufour, swiftly defeated the Catholic forces in just a few weeks with minimal casualties. Unlike the devastating civil wars in other European countries, Switzerland's conflict was relatively bloodless, a testament to its unique approach to conflict resolution. The victory of the Liberals paved the way for Switzerland's modern federal state. In 1848, a new Swiss federal constitution was adopted, transforming Switzerland into a unified nation with a strong central government, setting the foundation for the country's direct democracy and neutrality that continue to this day. The Napoleonic period and its aftermath marked one of the most turbulent yet transformative eras in Swiss history. From foreign occupation under Napoleon to civil war and finally the birth of a federal nation in 1848, Switzerland emerged stronger, more democratic and permanently neutral. This period laid the groundwork for the stable, prosperous country we know today. Modern Switzerland, 1848, present from industrialization to global influence. The birth of modern Switzerland and industrialization, 1848 to 1914. The adoption of the Swiss Federal Constitution in 1848 marked the beginning of modern Switzerland. The country transitioned from a loose confederation into a federal state, establishing a central government, a bicameral parliament, and a national currency, the Swiss franc in 1850. This period saw rapid industrialization, urbanization, and infrastructure development. Railroads and industry. The construction of railways connected Switzerland to the rest of Europe, fueling trade and industry. Cities like Zurich, Basel, and Geneva became centers of banking, pharmaceuticals, and machinery production. Banking and finance. Switzerland's banking sector grew rapidly, aided by laws that protected financial privacy. Social progress. Education and healthcare systems improved, and worker rights movements led to better labor conditions. By the early 20th century, Switzerland had transformed from an agricultural society into an industrialized nation with a strong economy. Switzerland in the World Wars, 1914 to 1945, the policy of neutrality. Despite being at the heart of Europe, Switzerland remained neutral in both world wars. World War I, 1914 to 1918, Switzerland declared neutrality immediately after the war broke out. However, tensions arose within the country as French-speaking Swiss supported the Allies, while German-speaking Swiss leaned toward Germany. The war caused economic difficulties, food shortages, and social unrest, leading to the general strike of 1918, which eventually resulted in labor reforms. World War II, 1939 to 1945, Switzerland again declared neutrality, but it was surrounded by Axis powers. Military defense. The Swiss army under General Henri Guesclin mobilized and developed a national redoubt strategy, preparing for guerrilla warfare in the Alps in case of invasion. Trade and diplomacy. Switzerland maintained economic ties with both the Allies and the Axis, supplying goods but refusing to allow German troops to pass through its territory. Refugee crisis. Switzerland accepted many refugees but controversially turned away others, including Jewish refugees fleeing Nazi persecution. Financial role. Swiss banks were accused of holding Nazi gold, leading to international scrutiny after the war. Despite criticism, Switzerland avoided direct destruction, and its economy remained stable throughout the war. Switzerland after 1945, a global financial and diplomatic power. After World War II, Switzerland emerged as a center for diplomacy, banking, and international organizations. Economic boom, 1950s, 1970s, Switzerland's economy thrived, fueled by exports, banking, and technological innovation. The country became home to multinational companies and saw improvements in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. International organizations. Switzerland became the headquarters of the Red Cross, the United Nations offices in Geneva, and many other global institutions. Despite its neutrality, it played a key role in peace negotiations and humanitarian efforts. Women's rights movement. One of Switzerland's most significant social changes came in 1971, when women finally gained the right to vote at the federal level, one of the last European countries to grant women's suffrage. In recent decades, Switzerland has continued to balance neutrality with global engagement. It joined the United Nations in 2002 after a historic referendum. It remains outside the European Union, though it has strong economic and political ties with it. It has played a mediating role in international conflicts, leveraging its neutrality for diplomatic negotiations. From its unification in 1848 to its modern role as a global financial and diplomatic power, Switzerland has navigated history through neutrality, resilience, and economic strength. It has faced wars, economic shifts, and social change, yet remains one of the world's most stable and prosperous nations. Switzerland was born in fire, shaped by war, and tempered by neutrality. From its medieval struggle for independence to its modern role as a beacon of diplomacy, this nation has stood the test of time. While the world fought in trenches and nuclear standoffs, Switzerland carved its own path, one of peace, innovation, and quiet strength. Today, its mountains stand as eternal guardians, whispering the stories of those who fought, built, and dreamed. And as history continues to unfold, Switzerland remains a testament to the power of resilience and the choice to forge one's own destiny.